going to Rome from
Yeah.
everywhere. So sort of like a taxation, right? So everybody was sending their money to Rome, but Rome was serving them fairly well. They maintained roads. I mean, they maintained unity and a certain order of things that allowed these towns to spring up, and all over Europe was the beginning of the Renaissance.
Okay.
The Renaissance happened under the church's auspices.
Okay.
Then came the Protestant Reformation. That's in the 16th century. So with the Protestant Reformation, then everything blew up. Now we don't believe any of these big picture philosophies. Now we're going to make up our own. So now today you have 20,000 little Protestant churches, right?
Wow.
And they all got their little, denomination, their own little philosophy. So the reason I'm saying this is that, and this occurred, science then comes up and says, look, you guys are a mess. You're all over the map. So we're going to do whatever we can do to be certain about something, because you guys have created so much diversity that we don't know who God is and what the mind is and what a human being is. But prior to that, they did. They had Thomas Aquinas.
Well, they thought they did, huh?
Well, they had something that was
They had a model.
Pretty advanced, because even today, Thomas Aquinas from the 13th century is taught throughout the world as one of the most coherent philosophies that exist, because it incorporated even natural science, because it goes all the way back to Aristotle, and they had science back then. So they had some decent science, and they had certainly better ways to explain things other than, hard science. They didn't have that.
Okay.
So once you bust up that unity, then the church loses its strength, and they can't provide you with a big picture explanation of the universe. So now that's out of the way. And so then you got science saying, well, we can study just these narrow little areas, biology, and they didn't even know what evolution was, right? So, but you're beginning to get hard science and certainly math, and we have people like Descartes who are just beginning to do this. So these guys communicated to everybody that there's only one thing you can be certain of. We can't be certain about God. We can't be certain about the mind. We're not even sure the mind exists. We just know that I exist.
Okay.
I know that's happening. That's what Descartes said. And there seems to be space and time, and we're going to stop there.
Okay. There's an interesting way that Einstein looked at this, and I have a quote of that in a little book I wrote on science, spirituality, and medicine. He basically says the job of the physicist is to try and understand how the cosmos works, using logic and math and all the things that the scientist does. And he basically says, well, good luck, because really the only way you're not going to understand how it works, because a human being doesn't have the capacity to understand it. But you can know about it, and the way you know about it is through your intuition and imagination and your experience. And he says those are the systems that help us to know what's happening. So it's interesting that the development of the religious approach that you're talking about and the scientific approach that has worked with that, and now the approach of Einstein really is telling a story. How do we know what we know? Is it because we're so smart we figure it out? Is it information that's passed through us? Is it some other way that it works? And we haven't worked that out, but the scientists of the world are reductionistic. They're chopping things into smaller and smaller pieces and trying to understand what that means. And they think that somehow that everything is going to fall into focus and we're going to know how things operate and we'll understand it. Holism, on the other side, is quite the reverse. It's looking at the oneness of everything. And that's what I look at as, if I was going to have a religion, it would be the religion of oneness and the connectivity that we all have in that way. And yet in our world that we live in, it's very interesting that we live in a dualistic world for the most part. It's all about I, me, my, and mine. And we're trying to find ways to justify that it's okay for us to separate ourselves and to think of ourselves as independent and adversarial and competitive. And we forget what we have to start with when we're conceived and we're born into a world where we're all connected when we start, and then it disappears. So it's interesting that this story fits together that way. And now I have a question for you. How does this take us into COVID-19 and into Black Lives Matter and to some of the other challenges we're seeing? Where does your background in philosophical theology help us to understand what's going on? Because I still haven't been able to make sense out of a lot of it. And I'm wondering, is this something that we are addressing from the point of view of science, or is it of spirituality? Is there some other underlying thing that's happening? We don't know. Maybe you have ideas on that. Help us.
Yeah, you're asking us such big questions, Len. You always have, and you probably always will. I really think that we make a mistake if we look to scientists to tell us what the mind is, what we mean by real, what do we mean by rationality, what do we mean by the psyche, what that is, what are the values that are most important. We turn to scientists who are not trained in that.
Right.
Because
well, that's why Einstein said what he said. That's why he said, that's why Einstein said what he said. He said, forget it. You're not going to understand it. You don't know what electricity is. You don't know what gravity is. You don't know what any form of energy is. But you could talk about it and describe it. But good luck. If you want to know what's happening, use your intuition, use your imagination, receive what you get in your dreams, okay? Or at times when you're meditating, because that's where the answers are. And you're not going to understand it because you're just a human being.
Well, I don't know why I would turn to Einstein to tell me about such things.
Okay.
We have a vast world of philosophers and theologians, and both East and West, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Einstein was an amateur, theist.
Yeah, but he still hit the nail on the head. He said, I think he did, from the point of view that we don't understand how things work. We don't. And just because we have a superficial knowledge through reductionistic reasoning doesn't mean that we're going to understand anything. What we're going to do is know how things work. We know in our hearts. And yeah, we don't know what a human being really is. When you look at it holistically, you can't be talking about pancreases and liver and kidneys and brains and saying, well, the kidney does this and the pancreas does that and the brain does the thinking. It's a holistic concept. We do that as a whole entity. And when you start getting to separate things into pieces that don't exist, you destroy the concept of what it is.
Len, this has been the work of philosophers, both East and West, way before all of this.
Okay.
So when we forget about Plato, we've forgotten about Aristotle, we've forgotten about the Asian philosophers who all worked on this issue of unity and holism.
Yes.
Taoism is a religion about the whole.
Okay.
Buddhism is a religion about kind of the whole in the going all down into the hole, into the void, right?
Okay.
Islam is a great religion about the one God.
Yeah.
These are great traditions. And so I advocate that people not look to scientists, even if they have cool things to say, because Einstein does.
Yes.
Look to the philosophers, look to the religions. They are the ones that work on these issues of holism. Now, you can take that and bring that over into medicine.
Yes.
Okay. So this in the 19th century, there were some that said that medicine should be the whole person.
Yeah.
But they were drawing from the philosophers of the time.
Yeah.
And then once the 20th century hit, people forgot about those holistic philosophers for the most part.
That's right.
There's a reason. You know what the reason is?
You tell me.
Business.
Oh, well, of course.
It's not good business.
We wrote a book on it, didn't we?
We wrote a book about that. So the business allied big business, big science, have taken over this field. So I think it's revolutionary for us to not look to those places for answers.
I think it's evolutionary. It's evolutionary.
It's evolution. but don't look to science to tell us. It's not their job
They
to tell
can't.
us
They're
where
unable
they
to.
came from. That's not
Yeah.
what they do. They talk about what's here in front of us, but where it come from and where we're going,
Yeah.
that's a different function by a different type of thinker.
Sure.
So COVID fits into this because in the traditions of the world, there's this notion that there's a dispensation that we live in, and then it comes to an end.
Yes.
And then there's more revelation.
Yeah.
So I just found out because I was with a Sufi mystic a few days ago.
Wow, that's great.
That,
I'm
they have,
jealous.
it was fun. It was up in New Hampshire.
Uh-huh.
And they believe that there will be a return, but not of Christ, but of Muhammad, but not the person Muhammad.
Okay.
But
Well, it's
and
symbolic. To me, it's symbolic.
there's a
It
return
could
of
be,
a higher being,
yes. Yes.
right?
Sure.
So then in Buddhism, they have the return of the Maitreya. That's the return of Buddha, but that's a name.
Okay.
So this is throughout Buddhism. I mean, the Dalai Lama talks about it. It's because it's the end of the age. Okay. So an empirical scientist, that they can't tell you about this. This is philosophy, this is theology, this is religion.
Well,
So,
that's why it's gotten us where we are. I mean, that's why we're in the jam we're in, because we look at medicine as pharmacology. We look at treating a set of symptoms with a bag of tools. We don't look at the essence of what a human being is and try to treat on the basis of that. We need to take a holistic look at how we exist in reality. And when you have that, then you got another job in front of your hands. And you solve it in a different way. You're not going to solve it by just solving symptoms. You got to look at the root causes. When I look at how the cosmos is organized, its perfection is just unbelievable. It doesn't make mistakes in my book. So I think that everything that happens has a purpose. And that purpose is to teach us how to move along our spiritual path and become more advanced. It's about evolving. It's evolution. And that's how I see it. Now, I want to take you from where we are in this conversation back to COVID-19 and back to the challenges that we're facing with Black Lives Matter and all the other things that we're seeing that are causing us to separate ourselves and to destroy what this country should be built on. How do we do that? And you're the perfect person to give that perspective. That's why we have this show today.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know if I'm perfect, but I do have an opinion about it. And
well, I want to hear it.
I think Black Lives Matter is quite important, but it's secondary to the bigger picture, which is, the oppressed masses. Okay, it's not just Black people.
That's right.
All right, the rest, almost everybody I know is in debt, poor, or heading toward poverty. So
right.
We have an impoverished mass of people here.
Yes.
But the worst, most depressed group, obviously, are Black people, for sure. So they're the vanguard of this evolution or revolution. They're the ones that are being hurt the most, right? So
yes.
But you can, those who are manipulating this reality will manipulate in certain points of high drama, where they can create the greatest drama.
Yeah, sure.
So that they can come with a solution. So they'll cause a problem, come with a solution, as David Icke has taught us.
Yes.
So it's my view that concurrent with COVID, there was some sort of plan actually to start this revolution in the streets and control that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And to use this, so let's take for example what happened to George Floyd.
Yeah,
I think it's a plausible case to be made.
Yes.
That the policeman that killed him was mind controlled.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody.
It seems that way when you look at it. I mean, why does somebody do that?
You can't imagine
that.
Why anybody who's sane would, in live daylight on camera, looking right at the camera, would do such a thing that is obviously evil. It's worse than evil. So theological categories we have, what's worse than evil? Well, that's
satanic.
Sin. But there's something worse than sin. Sin is conscious evil. Okay. But something beyond that we call iniquity.
What is that?
Iniquity is systematic and conscious evil.
Okay.
It's evil that is cosmically insane. you're doing it in defiance of established cosmic reality.
Wow.
To kill somebody in public, like a snuff film, like this
And
one,
so casually.
casually,
So casually.
the guy's face down, he's got handcuffs on, you're three of the cop. To do such a thing it's not plausible that a normal-minded person could do that.
No, and people were watching it saying, "You're killing him. You're killing him. Stop it." I saw the videos of that. I couldn't believe it. And
Yeah.
still, I wonder if they were all in mind control.
I think that this had to be staged, and if it wasn't staged,
Wow.
that there are people in that police department who are dark, evil, and satanic and do this for the pleasure of it.
Wow.
And don't mind being filmed.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't mind being filmed, you're doing it because you have a bigger agenda.
Yeah.
Which is, it's basically, number one, it's suicidal. So that man is suicidal.
Oh yeah, sure he was.
It's not going to, a lot of cops are suicidal, and we have a lot of suicide among police. So he's not just a suicidal guy. This is a guy who's doing a drama to make something happen. He's being used as an instrument and a tool to create this thing.
He's like a Manchurian candidate, huh?
Totally, I think he's a Manchurian candidate programmed to do this. We got them all over the place, and whenever they, pop into a movie theater with an AK, whatever it is,
47, yeah.
47. These are guys who are mind controlled and Manchurian candidates. We know this from the research of many people, including my friend Fred Burks,
Wow.
who documents this extremely well.
How does this happen, Byron? How does this happen?
Candidates?
How do you make Manchurian candidates? Who's doing that? And why are they doing that?
It's been done for decades, and it's well documented, and it's not something you hear on the ABC News, but
you don't hear anything about that.
Well, yeah, but millions of us know about it. It's become almost passé. I mean, these are the kind of things that we've first derived from Chinese brainwashing, and CIA began to learn about this.
Yeah.
Then they said, well, if the Chinese and the Russians can do it, we have to do it. So they started doing the 40s and 50s, and they perfected it by the 60s and 70s.
Wow.
So this is documented in movies, right? I mean,
in movies for sure.
Manchurian Candidate, the movie with they tell you right out. They come out and tell you movies, or Enemy of the State. Remember that movie not with Denzel Washington, but somebody. But anyway, so those, I think that was Denzel Washington.
Okay.
They're telling you what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's part of their code. They'll tell you what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's a movie. That's a movie. But you can't just call it a movie. You're saying it's them telling us through a movie.
Yeah, they feel that they are legalizing what they do when they tell the population flat out, this is what we're doing. And you can't prosecute us down the road because we told you what you were doing and you knew what we were doing.
Wow.
Millions of people know that the deep state does this, and that's why people, the base of Trump's base of voters, at the core of it are people that know this. That's why they stick with him, I think. I mean, it's a lot of my friends voted for Trump, who I know are aware of this, and they think he was going to fix it. They thought that he was going to go after the deep state. And there's something to that, because the deep state came after him.
Do you think anybody could go after, first of all, who is the deep state?
So,
you know that?
We have many good researchers. We had an entire conference in 2009 in Santa Cruz.
Wow.
With maybe 500 people, Jim Mars and all the best researchers. And I was part of that planning of that. We put that together. It was called Deep Politics Reconsidered, I think it was.
Wow.
So it's deep politics, which are the people that plan these things, such as the war in Iraq. I mean, the war in Iraq was obviously evil,
right.
Dark, stupid, and satanic.
Yeah.
And really, in a way, that was the end of the United States, because when they first bombed Baghdad, to me, that was it. It was over, because they got away with it. They hoodwinked the New York Times.
Oh, yeah, they're easy to hoodwink.
And then, it was really 9 months, not long after, that the whole world figured out that there were not any weapons of mass destruction. And then nobody bats an eye, and they just keep going.
Yeah.
And so the population is fairly mind controlled, but these Manchurian candidates are placed in such a way as to keep the population in terror, fear, and polarized.
Well, that's what's happening. And that's why we're in the jam that we're in now. And how does that fit in with COVID-19? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I have a lot. And I think that COVID is just another sort of like the next big sort of false flag.
Mm-hmm.
And so 9/11 is the biggest one of all.
Yeah.
So once they got away with 9/11, and they got away with the Iraq War, and they got away with the war on terror, then they're emboldened. And don't forget, they're making money doing this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we know also from Catherine Fitz's work that the embezzlement of money from the federal budget is in the trillions.
Oh, yeah.
So no one ever talks about it, but it was admitted by Donald Rumsfeld. You know the story, Len.
Well, tell us about the story.
That on the day, 2 days before 9/11,
yeah,
Rumsfeld got cornered in a press conference.
Yeah.
And he said, Dan Rather actually, because it had been fomented in Washington, D.C. by Catherine Fitz and her friends, because these are people who come from the accounting world.
Mm-hmm.
So these are honest accountants at a high level.
Yeah.
Who began to see money missing.
Yeah.
All the departments, the HEW, Pentagon.
Was to the tune of $2 trillion. And they said, we don't know where it went.
We don't know where it went.
We can't account for it.
It was documented by the Inspector General of the Pentagon.
Yeah.
So Rumsfeld had to admit, well, I think it's 1.2 trillion. Nobody knows what happened to it. Okay, so at that point, the Congress, the Senate, and the Congress is holding up new weapons acquisitions until he answered the question and told him what happened to the money.
Yeah.
So he was cornered, and Dan Rather asked him, and that's what he said. Then 9/11 happens 2 days later, and everybody forgot about it.
Yeah.
Everybody forgot about the missing 2 trillion because it was 2 trillion.
Yeah.
So they got all the weapons they wanted, and they continued to embezzle money from all these, departments. So now they're talking over 10 trillion. And there's people that have worked on this who are highly qualified PhD level accountants who will go on in a Senate testimony or whatever you need and explain that they can document that the money was stolen. So these guys have enough money to create a Manchurian candidate. Okay,
well, that's for sure.
So they can do anything. They can control CNN. I mean, they clearly controls, CNN. CNN's become a propaganda arm.
Well, all the major news.
And all the major news.
It's the same.
And so what they wanted to make sure is that there was a left and a right. Is if you divide, you can conquer. And that goes back to the beginning of time.
That's right.
So it's so simplistic, but it works.
So you think COVID-19 is designed to divide and conquer us? Because it seems that way. It seems that's what's happening.
I think it's to make us helpless, so that they, really the final step in this march of dictatorship on the planet.
Yeah.
However, now I'd like to introduce this esoteric and occult aspect, if I may.
Sure, I want to hear it.
So that it looks like there's something extremely dark and evil going on here. That is not just people with trying to make a buck, but it's systematic.
It's deeper.
Yeah. It's not just about money and power. It's actually to make a statement about, I can do it if I want to do it.
Wow.
It's defiant to deity.
Wow.
So that kind of, in esoteric circles, when you have sort of the dark black magic or satanic, versus, the high white magic, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to show mastery of the situation, right? So you can master the situation through darkness and evil, but to do that, you do that because you have this agenda to show, hey, God, you're not even there, right? Look, I can do anything I want.
Wow.
I can do 9/11. My professor, I'm writing this paper now about theory of evil and good. And she said, look, I really want you to do this. I want you to cover the Holocaust
Wow.
and Hiroshima in your paper.
Wow.
Flat
Wow.
out, she said this because you're a theist, and your job, because you do working on the theory of good and evil,
Wow.
is to explain how there could be a God that didn't stop Hiroshima.
Hmm.
Because if God loves you, any parent, if God's like your parent, your parent's going to stop you from, destroying yourself if your parent can.
Well, there's a place here where I have to disagree a little bit with that, and I'll tell you why. We're not God, okay? At least in the sense of how we view God, and human beings don't know what God is, or they don't know God. They don't make the decisions that God makes, and we aren't capable of understanding some of the things that happen. And it boils down to trust and faith. For me, I have trust and faith that everything that has happened has been perfection. As ugly as it is, and as horrible as it is, I'm still a human being. And maybe it's a test of my allegiance and my belief, but I have a very deep spiritual belief in God. And I accept that my job is to be the best person I can be. That's my job. And to do good is to follow the golden rule. And when things happen that I don't understand, my trust and faith is being tested. And I can go along with that. I don't have to understand because I can't. So it's not about saying, God, what the hell are you doing? How do you go about killing 6 million Jews? And how do you call all these inequities that are occurring around the world? Don't do that. Well, I don't feel qualified to say that. I feel qualified to say, okay, I don't get it. I'll do the best I can. I've been close to death a couple of times. You know that. And both times that I had a conversation with God. It was a literal conversation. I didn't hear anything, but it was a conversation. And what I did was I said, okay, I get it. You're the boss. If it's time to go, take me. I'm ready. It's okay. I have trust and faith in you. But I have a couple of things I still want to do. There are people that are going to miss me, and my patients and my family and my friends. And I still have work to do. I want to do your work. That's our work, because I'm in a partnership with God. And that's how I view it.
Lovely.
It happened both times. So that the night before I had my open heart surgery for a triple bypass, I slept like a baby. I didn't have a problem. I was at peace with it. That's how I see it. And I hope that other people see it that way too, because it's so comforting. I don't have to know what God does and why God does what she does. Okay.
Well, you don't have to know, but it would be very helpful to understand things like COVID.
Okay.
If you go into what is known generally in the religious community, and I mean,
Okay.
World Department of Religions had 5,000 people from around the world who were Buddhists and Hindus and Islam, and Christians, all coming together. What do we know about God?
Yeah, we know a lot about God. We don't understand anything about him because we
Well,
don't understand. We're not scientists.
That's not the view of the religious community. The religious
Okay,
community,
that
which is
figures.
not nothing,
Yeah.
thinks that we know something because God reveals God's self to us.
Yeah, I believe that.
There's revelation. And
Okay, I believe that.
the scientists, you ask the scientists, they'll say, well, of course there's no revelation. We know that there's no God anyway, so
Yeah.
you're deluded. So
Yeah.
why are we going to a scientist to find out about this? That's
Yeah.
not their job. They have no
Yeah.
training.
No, they don't know anything. They don't know anything about this.
Doesn't do research or reading in this field. They don't know what Buddhism is. They don't know.
No.
They don't know what the great Hindu tradition is. They have no idea.
Yeah.
So why are we going to these people and not going to the people that devote their lives for centuries?
Yeah. Well, that's because they have the audacity to think they can figure things out, and they've literally figured out there's a big difference between knowing and understanding. You know a lot because you are human and you are graced with this information, but understand how they work, the scientific basis for it, forget it. That's
How
what
who works? How deity works? You mean?
no, how well, deity, you could call that all the forces of nature, whether
Yeah.
it be light or electricity or gravity. Nobody knows what that is. You can't, you could describe it, but you haven't got a clue. And without that clue, you just have to be humble and say, okay, thank you. I'm glad that I know about this. I don't have to understand how it works. I need to live my life as a good person. And that's how we work in partnership with God, in my view.
I think that's really beautiful, but I think it's even, and it's great to be humble. I mean, my God, it's a thank you for being humble about it.
Oh, well, I mean, it would be arrogant to be any other way.
Oh no, I think you can go a little further. I really do, because
Right?
God is not hiding. God is revealing God's self all
Through
the
us.
time
Through us.
to the mystics. It's not just what's happening right now. It's a huge perennial tradition of mystics and prophets and teachers in all
Yeah.
the world religions.
Yeah.
That if once you take that in, you realize we know some stuff that's pretty well agreed.
Okay, that's
Uh,
about knowing, but understanding is a different word.
and there's a lot of understanding. It's really a lot. It's just that it doesn't filter through
Okay.
because we have this totally secularized society,
Yeah.
and most young people are completely illiterate about religion.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
have no idea.
But I think they're not illiterate about spirituality. I think they believe in a higher being. I mean, who created this thing? Who created this perfect world that seems to be all messed up, but in a final analysis, it's not. It's perfection, and it's designed to help us learn the things that we need to know to grow spiritually. And our job is to try and work with the things that are dished out to us. The COVID-19, the inequities of Black Lives Matter, all the problems that we have with the ghettos. We could solve these things in a minute. We've got the money to spend on wars and weapons, but we don't have the money to spend on people that live in ghettos. The answer to solving Black Lives Matters is simple. It's an economic solution. It's about bringing up the standard of living. It's about trying to help to find ways that they can have education. It's to provide jobs that make sense, instead of keeping them down and keeping them sick and keeping them separated. We have to stop that. And we haven't got the wisdom at the top to do it. So we're relying on the wisdom from the bottom. And so people have to work from the grassroots level up, and it's overwhelming. We don't have the ability we never have had the ability to be good citizens that work on all the different aspects of the country that has problems. We can't get information first. It's a career to try and be a good citizen of the United States. So when things fall apart and there's a disaster, then we rear up and we say, we have to do something about this. We're not going to stand for it anymore. And that's where the godliness of human beings comes together and say, we will do this together. We will unite. We will not be divided. We will support one another, just as all of us support us. And it's a beautiful model, but it's so painful because we're being tortured in so many ways. The damn Buddhists were right. Life is about suffering, and but that's the way it is. So you have to do the best you can, and you have to come clean. And it's why we're doing this show. I fully expect to be censored tomorrow. We're not going to be on Facebook. We're not going to be on YouTube. We're not going to be any place. But it's fine. It's getting the message out today. And there will be people who watch this and will learn from it and will get the spirit of what humanity is about.
Well, I wish that you were, when you're saying you're appealing to getting everybody together from the grassroots.
Yeah.
And then we'll solve this thing.
Yeah, we have to be desperate first. Then we will respond. Without desperation, we just take it for granted. I'm okay. I don't have a big problem now.
Here's why I don't think that will happen.
Okay.
I don't think that'll work.
Okay.
It's whatever is happening in everyday current events is manipulated such that you cannot make political choices that are all that meaningful, because whatever happens, there is a wedge of deception systematically inserted, so that you cannot. And COVID is a nice metaphor because we can't get the data. We don't know how many deaths there are. We don't really know whether you should wear a mask or not. The World Health Organization said no mask. but that's just that's like one version of they're confusing us on purpose.
Yes.
So politically, we're not going to be able to do it. I sound pessimistic because
we won't do it politically. We will do it by revolution to start with, which hopefully will evolve into evolution, because revolution just means you throw down the leaders that are in charge, you put another pretty face in their place. They do the same thing that they've been doing for 1,000 years. Evolution is different. So then when that happens, we change the way we see things, we change the model, and hopefully we're moving gradually to a place where we become operating through sharing, giving, and loving, as opposed to all this narcissistic I, me, my, and mine stuff. And that's what causes the challenge. But when we're backed against the wall, we become very giving and sharing and loving. Look what happens in a Holocaust of any kind, where you have a problem with a tsunami or an earthquake where thousands and billions of people are threatened. We do what we can. We send money. We will go there and help. We send the good ship Lollipop or whatever it is to solve things, a ship of good hope. We have good hearts.
We really have good hearts. But these problems are not human-sourced problems.
Okay, now you're getting to something.
Off-planet.
Okay.
And, it sounds kooky.
Well, how can it sound kooky when you really think about, are we the only place in this universe that has billions of galaxies? Are we the only place where there's life? Are you kidding? That's arrogant thinking. Of course there's life on other planets. The question is what is that life like? What does it do?
A lot about that, and that's also been, not been disclosed, but there's tons known about life on other planets and extraterrestrials.
Wow.
Just vast knowledge about that.
Yeah.
And the disclosure of that is one of the most, exasperating things I've ever seen. And I've published many books about, not many, 3 books about UFOs.
Okay.
It's absolutely exasperating, because half the population now knows that the UFOs are here, ETs are here, but the government will not disclose what they've got, and they're holding on to it for a reason.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a reason.
Because there's a collusion between them and these extraterrestrial beings.
Wow.
Number one.
Wow, this is deep stuff.
Proven, in my humble opinion, what we know about the secret space program, the SSP, the secret space program, has been well documented. The best conference ever was held right in the middle of Silicon Valley, right across the street from Google, where they invited engineers to come from everywhere in Silicon Valley. And
Did they come? Oh my gosh, what happened?
And Foster Gamble and many other.
Okay.
But they got the engineers from the deep state to come out and say that they've reverse engineered UFO craft beginning in 1960.
Wow.
And that's all there documented. And they then went on into deeper issues as to how they were able to reverse engineer the craft and what they did with the craft. And they created a colony, sorry to sound weird, on Mars.
Well, why I applaud your authenticity. You may be wrong, but you may be right. And I think we have to be scientific about how we evaluate these things and look at them with an open mind. So I applaud you for that, Byron.
Well, look, we have the science on it. I mean, you can go look it up, but it's not going to be in the daily, nightly news. But
not the Wall Street Journal.
So many people know, now they're finally disclosing a little bit because they have to say something, because you get half the population already. It's already Ancient Aliens is the most popular show ever in the history of, nonfiction. The whole population knows it's a big lie.
Yeah.
But the secret space program at the core of this is a critical indicator of how much dishonesty is at the heart of all of these issues. So just that issue, that you can put that and bracket that as the UFO issue. But the other one I want to bring forward that I know more about, because I study it and I spent my life studying, is the higher worlds, not just the other worlds that are material, but the higher worlds of angelic beings.
Wow. Tell us about that.
Critical.
I don't know about that. Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, we have a lot of knowledge in Christianity and Islam and others about higher worlds.
Sure.
But now we have, since the 19th century, we have a lot of revelation about that.
Wow.
And that is also suppressed information, but there's been this vast outpouring of channeled teachings, and it's a lot of it's disinformation. So I spent a lot of time going through this,
Yeah.
and I found the sources I think are reliable. And those sources tell us that there's an angelic host for the planet, and the angelic host is actually in charge. We're not really in charge.
Well, it makes sense because the organization is perfect and we are evolving in a way that's excellent. We're learning very painfully through our mistakes of how things work. And to have something that ties it together, which is what you're trying to do, is why I invited you to the show tonight, is because I knew you had this insight. And I haven't had, frankly, the courage to do something like this until now, because I've done about 50 shows on COVID-19.
Wow.
And the science of it doesn't add up the way it should. I talked about that on the introduction of the show. And if it doesn't make sense, something is behind it that does make sense.
Yeah.
And what you're saying does make sense to me. Do I know that it's correct? No, I don't. Am I professing and supporting what you're saying? No, not really. I'm listening to it with a lot of curiosity and interest, and it's going to impact how I think in the future. I'm going to have more of an open mind because I have so much respect for you and the work that you've done. I would call you one of my dearest friends. We've had a wonderful experience the last 12 years as we have grown together, and how we've taken different parallel paths that have come to the same place in many ways. And so we are connecting the dots here. You've presented a model that makes a lot of sense, whether it's right or it's not. And we should be open-minded about things like this and consider them, because if we don't, we're just going to miss out. And right now, America is in a funk, and that's being kind to it.
Yeah.
We're on the edge of fascism, really.
Civil war, almost certainly.
Well, some of the things that, see in watching The Matrix, and I watched another movie the other night, it's called V for Vengeance, scared the crap out of me.
Oh, your first time, this one?
Yeah, I looked at that and I almost wanted to cry. It's like, my God, are we moving in that direction? Could it be? Am I crazy to think like this? Am I some kind of conspiracy theorist now? No, I'm not. I'm an open-minded doctor who's trying to figure out what the hell is happening. And I haven't been able to do it. And that's where I turn to you, Byron, because I know that I can trust you. I would trust you with my life, my friend.
Thank you, Len. That's beautiful. And I trust you with my life. Believe me.
Yeah, you could.
You are my doctor, after
all. well, that doesn't necessarily mean you can trust me. A lot of the things I learned in medical school turned out to be not right. And the model is flawed, something terrible. Just like our country is flawed. We don't have democracy anymore. We have an economy, and it's about money and power. And some of the things that I've seen happen tell me that there has to be something at the top that's all messed up. I mean, for God's sakes, we've got a Federal Reserve. What kind of idiocy is having a Federal Reserve? It's not even a banking system that we have for the country. It's privately owned, for God's sakes. Why don't we just tell them to buzz off? Not pay him a penny. I think something horrible would happen, but I don't know what it is. And I think it's coming from these people that maybe you're talking about that would explain that.
Well, even David Icke in the beginning from, 25 years ago was saying there's something off planet that's doing.
Yeah, well,
David Icke has been marginalized because he said it was reptilians. And he's walked that back. But the basic point that everybody really ought to get is that this is a big universe. It's not just the humans on the ground.
That's right.
There's extraterrestrials, there's angelic. Now, on the angelic, I just want to get this in.
Okay.
That the angelic host of a planet, there are millions of inhabited planets. They have their angels that are kind of the supervisors of the planet. They're ministers.
Okay.
Now, our planet, in my view, had an angelic default.
Wow.
An angelic rebellion. Now, this is clearly stated in the Old Testament and somewhat referred to in the New Testament.
Wow.
So this is a Christian tradition and a Jewish tradition of the fallen angels. So this has been made into a huge thing in the Ancient Aliens series,
Okay.
which is 120 shows, the most popular stuff on TV of
Yeah.
its kind.
Yeah.
So
Millions of
they're
people.
looking at the Anunnaki, right? So that's a mythic framing of this
Sure.
off-planet angelic and extraterrestrials
Yeah.
who came here to exploit us, to
Yeah.
enslave us.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a counter story to the story I'm going to give.
Okay.
Now, that story is, I believe, almost a planted story that doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
That I was at a conference with 3,000 people, and that was the main message of the conference,
Wow.
is that what Zechariah Sitchin has to say about the Anunnaki is the real story about the origins of the human race.
Wow.
We were bred, this is David Icke and others, we were bred by these off-planet beings, and we were genetically designed to be their slaves.
Wow.
And that's the pre-Sumerian history. So then we begin to have recorded history, and the Anunnaki are showing up in the Bible in this garbled version. So these guys give their interpretation. Now I'm going to give a different interpretation.
Okay, good.
My interpretation is not that these are extraterrestrials from planet X, the 10th planet,
Okay.
but that the planet itself was a member of a local universe of planets. And one little area of that local universe, the angelic host went into rebellion against God.
Wow.
It's very difficult for that to happen. But it's a foundational belief mythically among Christians and Jews and many in Islam. So because it is in the Bible that Lucifer fell and Satan was with him, right?
Wow.
So where do we get this notion of Satanism? Well, it's from there, right?
Yeah,
so who are these Satanists? And we've documented that Satanism is out there. That's well documented.
Okay.
They're public about it, and they come out and tell you we're Satanists.
Wow.
So where did they get that from? Well, maybe they just made it up. But how is it that they have all the power and the money? How could that be? Well, because this goes back before the Romans. This goes back before the Egyptians. This is back before the Sumerians.
Oh my goodness.
This is a planetary rebellion, a planetary takeover. So it's, to me, the question is, what is the discourse you're going to follow? You're going to follow the Zechariah Sitchin discourse, the Ancient Aliens discourse. You're going to follow the conventional Christian biblical discourse, which is not too bad. Or you're going to follow this one that I'm presenting, which comes from the Urantia revelation and from other sources, modern sources.
Wow.
Which has updated this stuff from angels actually telling us, revealing it to us, that when this occurred, a certain bloodline then was promulgated on Earth, and that bloodline became the royalties in Europe and in the Far East, and those are affiliated with these beings.
Wow.
So these off-planet beings, this is the angelic host of the planet.
Wow.
Is gone to the dark side. Sounds like science fiction.
Well, okay.
Science fantasy.
So what? So what?
So when they were able to create these cultures that were basically worshiping them. And if you look at Greek mythology has these deities, these divinities, who are rapists, murderers, self-indulgent, selfish, malicious beings. Why would you have a religion of that? That's Greek religion, okay?
Yeah.
Look at any of these religions, they have these dark beings that are in the religion for a reason, because this really did happen in my view. So it comes down to the Roman Empire. So at this point, you've got a well-organized elite that's hidden away, that is manipulating things from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And some people think it's the Egyptians, some people think it's the Sumerians. I'm saying it's pre-Egyptian, pre-Sumerian.
Wow.
And so
that does make sense. It has to start a long, long time ago.
Yet it really, because the power they've accumulated is such that they can get anything they want.
Yeah.
And so the great revolutions of science and all this have been blows against them. And certainly in my view, the advent of Christ was the biggest blow, because Christ was was sent to break the back of this evil conspiracy, and did mainly stop its momentum.
Wow.
But it had 100,000 years of momentum. So it's been slowly, because it has to be adjudicated in the proper way. So there's coming down to these bloodlines. Again, a lot of people talk about bloodlines. This is not new to me, but these bloodlines that are really running these elite organizations, including the kings and queens of England, are in these bloodlines, right? France, etc. So they secretly have these agendas and foment them and have all the money you could ever want. So the battle is at its high point in the last, I'd say, 20 years, because I think it's the end of the age and they are going to be taken out once and for all.
Wow.
And their last hurrah is in our time. They're trying to take the planet down before they are arrested.
Right.
And the way I understand it is many of these, the humans have not been stopped, but the angelic host that's dark has been removed from the planet. And it's very recent, it's in the last 20, 25 years. They have been removed from the planet. So that's why David Icke stopped talking about that, because I think he intuited or was told that threat is now gone. It's really just the residual elites that had that support from off planet. I'm talking about extraterrestrial support as well. These are dark extraterrestrials and dark angels. They were supporting these elites for centuries. They've now been judged, adjudicated by higher courts, really. And so the last court is really the human court, which I believe is now being adjudicated as we speak, because we're right down to the last 10 years before the planet will be totally destroyed by climate change, by disease, plagues. We don't have much time left. And they're giving us all the free will they can before a divine intervention happens. It's universally believed by fundamentalist Christians, right? That Christ will come back to judge the age. Yeah. So that's just a mythological version of what I'm talking about. I'm giving us a more modern version that yes, they're there. Yes, Christ can come back in certain form, and this judgment has to occur because it will destroy everything. And there won't be humans left, because a nuclear war would do it. And it would be easy to have a nuclear war at any point, and that alone. But putting that aside, plague and climate change, whatever you want to think that is, we know the climate is warming. It's out of control already. It's almost too late. The polar caps are going to melt. We're going to have flooding. We're going to have migrations of hundreds of millions of people. There's no way around that. So the chaos is just beginning. And the plagues are going to continue to come. And some of them are going to be man-made, and some are not going to be man-made. So we have a conflagration that's coming at us right now. So this is just the very beginning of it. And the destruction that's going to come is going to be vast.
Well, that's Armageddon.
And that's Armageddon, but that's the mythic version of it. But now we have a more modern version of it that you can call the end of the dispensation. And we have to look at modern revelation, not just ancient scriptures, because we've got plenty of modern revelation that tells us. And we've got these angels that have been channeling to everybody. I mean, I know 20 people that are channels. And they're channeling this. They've been channeling this since the 70s and 80s, telling us this. But the part of it that I'm kind of a specialist in is the part about how the iniquity is done. Iniquity being different from evil. Iniquity is defiantly, it's basically a suicide. It's cosmic suicide. These people are cosmically doing suicide and taking us down with them. And they're doing it to defy God, to say, God, you're not even there. look, I can do anything I want, as I was saying before. I can do anything I want, and you won't do anything about it. But what I'm saying is there will be a judgment, and they will be judged.
Well, I have another way of looking at it, Byron. Okay, and I'm just me. I mean, you're a very educated specialist in philosophical theology, and I'm just a human being who thinks about things sometimes. And I think that the way we operate is that we are created by God, obviously. I mean, how else could we have been created except by some entity? It could be a good, bad, or a good God or a bad one or whatever, but we are created by something. And I call that Mother Nature. That's God. And I think that God doesn't have it all together. I don't think God is infallible. I don't think God sees the future. I don't think he is all powerful or she is all powerful. I think that we are in a partnership with that God. And what we're doing is we're living lives where we are helping God to understand itself through our experience. And as we do that, God gets a better picture of what actually is from the creation that it has made. And that we do that in a sacred way. So I have great respect for my Father, okay, Father God, because I am in part that.
Yeah.
And we together, all of us, make up what God is, all of the universe is. The good and the ugly, the evil and the good. And the reason I think it exists is because that's how we learn. That's how we evolve. That's how God evolves itself. Okay, the male, female God. Now, I don't know what you think of that, but that gives me great peace of knowing that this is important to do, because I, as an extension of God, need to do my part. And if we all do that together, then we become supporting the whole as the whole supports us.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it work. Now, I don't know what you think of that, but that's my philosophy.
Len, you have intuited such great ideas about God. I'm in admiration. That's a beautiful story.
Well, I didn't do it. It comes to me in the dream world.
No, I'm saying you were intuiting it. I mean, you're being revealed to you, these dimensions, and it's fabulous. I mean, that happens to what you just said is the most important philosophic theological movement of the 20th century. It's called process theology. That God is evolutionary.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It is evolving. It is not all powerful.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's talked about widely in all the universities and seminaries.
Wow.
As what's called process theology is invented by someone named Alfred North Whitehead in the 1920s. And so that fanned out all over the world, and particularly China loves this, and Chinese thinkers, but it's very much in Europe and very strong in the United States, is that deity is evolving and is not all powerful.
Right.
So my advisor at the university here is a process theologian. So she doesn't believe that there's a almighty Father God. And that because it's evident that the God must not be all powerful. Because if God was all powerful and loves us, God would not allow the Holocaust, Hiroshima, the Vietnam, all the rest.
Now we're going back to that place where I think it's arrogant to say that, because we aren't the whole of God. We are the extension of, and we have limitations. We're human beings. We represent humanity. And we are not able to understand why God says what God says. We have to deal with it. And that's the job that we have as human beings. And as we do that, then God knows what it is doing with, what's happening because of us.
Because we're going out and doing stuff.
He's got to have us to be able to evolve himself or herself.
Len, that is flat out, word for word, the greatest theological movement of the 20th century. I don't know how you do this. I mean,
well, I don't know how I do it either. I don't take any credit for it. I believe in something called Akashic records.
Yes.
Whereas all the information of God is stored.
Yeah.
And as we create the experiences that we have, everything that we discover, that we co-create with our God, goes into those records and is distributed to others to help them on their journeys, so that that can be it can evolve too. That's why we have the story of the 100th monkey, because that tells us that it's coming when it's supposed to, and it's perfect in the way it's undone, the way it's done. So we don't have anything to worry about. There is no worry. We just need to do what's right. It's like an up-down thing. It's good and evil. Well, choose what you want, knowing that you're here for an instant in time. You know, the universe is billions of years old, and we're haggling about a 100 years and how we're going to do it. Do it right. Get it right. And there will be, that's the best you can do. That's your job as your godlike entity that you are.
Well, I think, we could probably close on that note. That was beautifully said.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
I want to thank you so much, Byron, for doing this, because you bring the best out in me as we do this, and it is something that helps everybody to at least have a picture of it. Now, there are going to be a lot of people who think we are crazy people, and it's okay, because maybe we are. Okay, I'm not saying that I have it all right, but it's all coming from my soul, and it is from yours too. So,
well, and then in a way, they say he's a poet and doesn't know it, but you're like a theologian and you don't know it. So,
well,
congratulations.
Well, thank you, and thank you again for the show.
I'm just saying that I think that there is a theological dimension. Without that, it's hard to get this. You can get it intuitively, like Len Saputo, or you can labor at it in a library, like me. And we both come to the same place. So,
well, it's a chemistry that we have together, that we work in different ways, but we come to the same place. We all climb the same mountain, but no two of us take the same path.
Yeah.
So here we are. Anyway, my friend, thank you for doing this today. And thank you all for listening. You listen to The Voice of Reason. I'm Dr. Len Saputo. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be in again tomorrow night. Join us then.
Thank you.